So what exactly did you want us to do?
So we have to have basically a video about the Beatles and their impact and everything about their British invasion.
Okay, so when they originally came to the States?
Yeah, when did they actually come to the States?
1964.
1964.
Yeah.
My boy's been doing his research.
February
like
7th of 1964.
February 7th? I like that.
Okay.
I remember reading about them pulling up at JFK Airport to like a reception of 3,000 fans, I think it was. All American little teeny boppers, or whatever they called them.
Jeez. Yeah, I got my computer in front of me if we need to fact check. Because it sounds like the Beatles were pretty revolutionary.
So when was the group originally formed, outside of just coming to America?
I think 1958.
1958.
That's when the trio started. But that was
And who in the trio?
It was.
I think it was like, it was Lennon,
Yeah.
Harrison, and McCartney. Yeah. And so who was the final member that they added?
It was a drummer, wasn't it?
Yes. Ringo Starr.
1962.
In
And so
1962.
they came to America for what?
Play some music, man.
Yeah.
Why else would the Beatles come to America?
Well, I mean, they could have just been on an interview tour. They could have been doing a musical tour. They could have just been a press tour, you know, trying to get their names out there.
I'm pretty sure.
I know for a fact they went on the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, did they interview or did they just perform? I don't even know.
I think they interviewed.
They interviewed as well?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, check on that.
Beatles, Ed Sullivan Show.
I know the audience, or like the watching audience for that show was crazy that year, or that day, for the Beatles. I think it was upwards of like 70 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70 million Americans watching that broadcast.
Dude.
Which is wild. I can't even think of
There was a lot
any
of
television program now that has 70 million viewers.
There's a lot of young ladies that were losing their stuff over this band. 7 million, it sounds like.
That's a lot.
Alright. I got too much money. So this is him in the Ed Sullivan Show, I guess.
You can just hear the audience screaming in the back.
You can hardly hear the band over them.
Yeah, it sounds like a...
Look how young they look.
Was this their first performance?
This is the first American performance, I believe.
Yeah, on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Why do you guys think that young Americans took to the British invasion so much?
Because it was different.
It was different? Like, what about it, though?
Well,
Because I think in America at the time, the main artists were like the figurehead of music at the time was like artists like Bob Dylan and Elvis Presley. So it's definitely a lot different from Bob Dylan, who was like a folk singer. Like I've seen videos of him doing concerts with a banjo, you know? So it's quite a contrast to artists.
well, personally, I think that when the Beatles came over, I think that it was just really crazy timing with like the revolution going on, and I guess like, I mean, it was early 60s, so like the whole like hippie era, and like I said, the revolution, and like I guess like the whole LSD thing was starting to get out of hand, I guess, really.
And they sort of exemplify that because the long hair, the sort of wily, fun party vibe that the Beatles sort of give off, I think like that's definitely why, you know, American teens would gravitate towards.
Like it was like, yeah, it was
that a
a
perfect
sense of
time?
identity almost,
Mm-hmm.
especially them being from Britain, like Britain, right?
Yeah.
Liverpool or
Liverpool, yeah.
yeah, like it was just so different. It was an easy way for them to like, I don't know, to identify as a whole new. I mean, that's what it was all about, I guess, was trying
It's
to
about
not
new
be
beginnings.
like your parents anymore.
Yeah, and that definitely is a new beginning, you know, someone from a complete opposite side of the world, you know, who's coming and creating such a stir.
Yeah.
So they probably helped a lot of American kids try to revolutionize their own identities even.
So what would the modern day equivalent of the Beatles be for you guys? For me, I think it would be One Direction. I think One Direction is a male British band, roughly the same amount of members. I remember in middle school and high school, sort of the craze that went on with One Direction and their sort of rise to fame was very rapid, I feel. And had sort of like that same shaggy, long-haired look that sort of the Beatles kind of had.
I think it was Drake.
Drake? What makes you think that?
Because,
Drake is the modern day Beatles.
yes.
Okay.
Because he was not originally from the US, he came from Canada, and he just rocked the charts since 2009, and everyone loved him.
Honestly, I can see that as well. Drake has quite a big, like, just a consistent large following, sort of like a cult following, you know?
What's your favorite
Like
Drake
Drake
song?
can do no wrong. Same thing with the Beatles, I believe.
I don't have a favorite.
Alright, well, what's a Drake song that would help us understand why he's such a monumental artist?
I think a song like that would be perfect to be Hotline.
I want a little Hotline Bling.
I think that's
Yeah,
definitely
that blew up
a
whenever it
perfect
came
song because I think that exemplifies everything Drake really is.
Okay.
He has very consumable music. It's like music that can be played no matter where you're at or what you're doing or whatever your age is. I think there's no real there's no true age guidelines for especially that song. Other Drake music I think has more of like gender boundaries, or not gender, age boundaries. But I feel like definitely that song is the perfect. And I think it was 2015 when that song came out.
I was about
That
to
was
say.
the only song I heard on the radio
Yeah.
for at least like 2 years, man. Like I'm not even gonna lie, like that song was on.
Certainly
every
an
day.
enormous presence.
Yeah, and I feel like that same enormous presence could definitely felt like a Drake,
Yeah.
you know.
As the Beatles.
Yeah,
I was saying
think
no.
definitely.
Drake certainly has an enormous presence. I will agree with you. But here's a song you're talking about. Maybe it's just music video.
The music video was also very important as well.
You
Because
think?
the music video, beyond just the actual song, it also like it took on a life of its own with like the meme culture and sort of like the influence it had outside of just the actual music.
The
Like,
meme
for-
culture?
There's a lot of
There's
memes
a lot of
from
right.
this
There's a lot of
music
memes
video in
You're right.
specific, you know?
Yes.
So not only did he have like a musical impact, it also left like a cultural impact. And honestly, I still see memes from this music video in 2019.
Drake did have a large presence with a younger viewer, you know?
Yeah.
I guess I can see that. But it's interesting, that wasn't the case. This song, like you said, is 4 years old now.
Yeah.
Drake's been making music forever, you know what
Drake's
I
been
mean?
making music for roughly about a decade. Because
Okay.
he started in 2008 or 2009. But then you also have artists like Justin Bieber.
And
Justin Bieber, I think, is another shout for modern day Beatles equivalent. I mean, him being a single artist though is a little bit more difficult, but I think it's the same sort of idea with Drake as well. That individual coming over and sort of turning the whole world upside down. I mean, everyone was singing "Baby" when it first came out.
He was Canadian too?
And he's Canadian as well, and it's just that foreign artist coming over and sort of
See, but
smashing everything.
when I think of the Beatles, I don't think they were so revolutionary just because they were foreign.
They also, the Beatles, to your point, I think sort of originated pop music. They sort of created the basis of what pop music is now. Like without the Beatles, we wouldn't necessarily even have artists like Justin Bieber or even Drake. Like Beatles are definitely one of those original groups that are like the pinnacle or the basis for.
Cornerstone.
Yeah, definitely. To me at least.
I think you'd probably be right. I think they have influenced an incredible amount of music that we wouldn't even really be able to comprehend, really.
Yeah, and like just the stark difference from what they were making at the time to what was popular. For instance, like I already mentioned, Bob Dylan. You know, that's folk music. That's literally like that's kind of out there comparative to pop music. You know, so it was like a whole drastic change in perspective and sound.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is personally, I don't think that anyone's ever come close. You know, we were talking about a comparison. Who in today, 2019, who represents what the Beatles were in 2019? And I just don't think anyone comes anywhere close to representing and standing for what the Beatles stood for.
I feel you definitely on that point, especially about the idea of them sort of initiating this like rebel culture with them growing their hair out and sort of just this rebellious idea of how they carried themselves. I feel like there's definitely, with Drake, with One Direction, with Justin Bieber, there's no real comparison in that aspect. They were really trailblazers in whatever they did. And I think Drake maybe can be a trailblazer, but definitely not for the attitude of the nation. Like the Beatles literally changed the attitude of the nation, which is crazy.
I think their timing had a lot to do with it. I don't know if they changed the attitude of the nation, but I think they certainly helped the nation. I think they certainly helped the nation with an identity because they wanted to change their attitudes on their own. And I think the Beatles
Sort of gave them that first step.
not only were like a symbol of what Americans were trying to do at the time, but yeah, I think just with the music, their music is powerful,
Mm-hmm.
So
Every kid wanted to be like them.
100%. I'm sure I probably wanted to be a John Lennon at some point,
Hell yeah.
The infamous like circle shades that he has that still kind of like, go crazy today.
You know what? I'll bet they come back. I bet they definitely.
They already have.
You're right.
Like those small circle lenses, like
Yeah.
it was just iconic.
Yeah, I used to have a pair, and I was gonna find them for the project, but I can't find them right now.
I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I think we have a good basis for this project.
Dude, I think we're gonna kill this project.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be very difficult at all. But Makayla,
We're at 11 minutes right now.
just out of curiosity, who do you think is the modern day Beatles?
I have no idea.
You don't have an idea, but what you mean?
No, just because I feel like they were so out of there. Like they brought in their own style, so I feel like nobody else can compare.
What about the Rolling Stones? Do you listen to? Yeah.
Not necessarily, but I know that they did influence them to come over to America.
The Rolling Stones.
That's a good. We can
sort of
use
did
that.
come
That's a
over
good
as
point.
well, and not even sort of. They came over and killed us.
So the Beatles influenced a lot of other English performers to come over.
Definitely.
They inspired Rolling Stones, Hermits, The Searchers. Yeah.
And even if they just didn't inspire necessarily, they sort of made it way more accessible. Because you have artists like Adele,
Right.
who maybe might not have been able to reach an American audience without the original sort of push from the Beatles. It's a lot difficult. It's a lot more difficult than people think to, go to a whole other country and become the #1 artist.
And then you got a lot of bands like the Ramones,
Mm-hmm.
and like the Clash. That I don't know. Like it would have been a shame if that music never made it to the U.S. What if they just stuck to their own local demographic? How sad would that have been?
Yeah, I know. It also, just the world becomes more like as time goes on, we sort of like become like more of a globalization or a globalized society where like there's no real borders. Everything is shared between one another, no matter how far or how different the cultural views are. So I feel like definitely with the Beatles, coming to America, that sort of like helps kick off that idea, and helps kick off that shared culture of just the world
Love.
in general. Yeah.
That is literally what the Beatles were trying to sell.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I like
We have
that.
some good ideas for this project.
Definitely.
I said we go ahead and get started on it.
Let's do it.
Start
All
it out.
right.
Start it.